Let me tell you something raw, something deep. Something that feels like truth in your bones. The narcissist doesn't flinch when you're furious. That fire in your voice. That storm in your chest. They don't fear it, they feed on it. Your outrage is their affirmation. Your heartbreak is their spotlight. They'll drink every drop of your reaction like it's holy water poured straight into their parched ego. Because to the narcissist, your pain isn't pain. It's proof. Proof they still hold the strings. That they still haunt the halls of your heart. Every tear you shed at 2 a.m. Every desperate replay of conversations that should have ended long ago. Every unanswered text you keep rereading. All of it tells them they still matter. That they're still the center of your storm. They've spent their life building a kingdom made of mirrors and fog, where control is king and illusion is law. And every time you respond, every time you break down, every time you reach back, that's another stone reinforcing their castle. But then, something sacred happens. You stop, scream, not with a slam of the door, but with stillness. You wake up, and for the first time, there's no knot in your stomach. No waiting. No checking your phone for words that never come. No hunger for closure that was always a carrot on a stick. Just a quiet so holy it feels like grace. And that silence, it echoes louder than any rage, it hums with power, it's the anthem of liberation. To the narcissist, that quiet is catastrophic. It's not just the end of a chapter. It's the demolition of their temple. Because if they can't move you, they can't own you? If they can't own you, they can't lie to themselves anymore. That lie that said they still had a piece of you tucked in their pocket. You're not playing the game. You're not explaining your worth. You're not dancing for crumbs. And to the narcissist, that is devastation. Not because you became bitter. Not because you plotted revenge. But because you found your way out of the maze they painted as paradise. And here's the gospel truth they'll never preach. That the narcissist never mourns you. They mourn the reflection, the applause, the echo, the control. But when you step off that stage, when you no longer clap, when you take your light with you, they disappear. That's when their world begins to crack. Not with your anger, but with your absence. Because healing isn't a roar, it's a whisper, a knowing, a sacred exhale that says, I'm not coming back. And that freedom, that holy, untouchable freedom, that's the one place the narcissist can't follow. Stage 1 Daniel, this is just a test. They'll come back. In the beginning, the narcissist doesn't tremble. Not yet. They lean back like a gambler holding a crooked hand, smiling like they already know the outcome. Your silence. They don't believe it. Not for a second. They call it a performance. A bluff. A little act you're putting on to see if they'll come running like they always did. Because let's be honest. How many times did you pick up the pieces after they shattered you? How many times did you hand over grace like it was candy on Halloween? You forgave. You hoped. Again and again. And now? Now you're quiet. And that shakes their rhythm. But they don't call it fear. Not yet. They call it inconvenience. How dare you change the choreography? How dare you rewrite the script where they don't get to play God anymore? As so denial becomes their hiding place. Their fantasy fortress. Because the narcissist can't handle the truth that someone would choose peace over performance. They wholeness over havoc. They tell themselves you're still watching, waiting for that big Hollywood moment. Their redemption arc. And because control is their compass, they start poking. A breadcrumb here. A cryptic message there. Just enough to test the waters. Just enough to see if your soul still flinches when they knock. But this time it doesn't. You don't nibble. You don't chase. You don't even shift in your seat. And that's the moment they start to feel the tremor. Not because of your anger, but because of your absence. And to the narcissist, absence isn't peace. It's panic. Because for the first time, they're looking into the mirror and seeing nothing staring back. And that's the kind of quiet that rattles the bones. Stage 2 Reasserting control. Watch me reel them back. Now the show begins. When denial crumbles, the narcissist doesn't retreat. They perform. This is where the lights dim and the spotlight finds them again. The role. The changed soul. The repentant lover. The echo of everything you once wished they could be. They speak sugar. They whisper nostalgia. I miss you. No one knows me like you do. Suddenly, they remember your favorite artist, the smell of your laugh, the stars you counted that one night long ago. But don't be fooled. This isn't a conversion, it's strategy. Because the narcissist isn't reaching for love, they're reaching for leverage. They want the throne back, the control, the game. And here's what cuts them deeper than any sword you're no longer playing. You've gone still. Not bitter. Not better than. Just whole. And wholeness, that terrifies someone who survives on broken pieces. So they shift tactics. One day it's sweet promises. The next it's guilt-drenched blame. You've changed. You're cold. How could you forget us? It's not sincerity, it's sabotage. And through all the noise, all the smoke and mirrors, you remain quiet, not to punish, not to gloat, but because there's nothing left to say. You're not angry. You're free. You're not waiting. You're walking. And they feel it. They feel it in their teeth. Because nothing they say, no new lover they parade, no filtered photo they post, none of it moves you anymore. And that's when it hits them. They never had your heart. They only had your reaction. Stage 3 rage. How dare they stop needing me? And now the mask finally slips. See, once they realize the stage is empty, the audience has gone home. And your spotlight is pointed elsewhere. They ignite. Not with sorrow but with insult. Because to the narcissist, your healing isn't just a loss. It's an offense. You didn't crawl back. You didn't shout or plead. You didn't make a scene. That's what shreds their pride. So rage brews. But it's not always thunder, it's often a whisper. Slander cloaked in silk. Lies dressed as lament. They smear you in subtle ways, bend truths in backrooms. They rewrite your story and cast themselves as the bruised hero. But it's not about love, it never was. This isn't about mending. This is about masking. The covering the cracks in their crown. Trying to rewrite the ending so it looks like they were the one left bleeding. They can't win your heart, so now they try to win your shadow, your reputation, your memory. But no matter what they throw, you don't turn. You don't bite. You don't need to defend your peace. And that stillness, that grace, it guts them. Because in your silence is something they can't decode. A new life, a better rhythm, a rising, one where their name no longer echoes, one where their voice no longer directs your steps. You're no longer orbiting their gravity, you're shining with your own. And for the narcissist, that isn't just rejection. That's extinction. And friend, that is where your freedom lives. Stage 4 rewriting the narrative. If I can't control them, I'll control the story. When fury fizzles into nothing, when they scream into silence and you don't even flinch, the narcissist doesn't surrender. No, they pivot. They grab the narrative like a drowning man reaches for driftwood. If they can't hold you, they'll try to hold the pen. They'll rewrite the ending, revise the characters, flip the script, and guess what? In their new version they're the misunderstood hero, the wounded sage, the martyr. And you're the heartless deserter, the storm that wrecked their perfect little world. But none of it is truth. It's theater. Because truth requires reflection, and reflection, that's something they can't bear. So they twist it. You weren't tired, you were toxic, you weren't healing, you were hateful. They rewrite your strength as cruelty, your boundaries as betrayal. And all those nights you stayed, all those tears you swallowed, and all those chances you handed them on broken palms, erased, rewritten, vanished like smoke. Because here's what they need more than the truth, the illusion of innocence. They can't bear the stillness of consequence. So they build a fantasy out of fog. A bedtime story where they're the victim of your emotional instability, your cold departure, your refusal to dance when they played the same broken tune. And why? Because silence exposes them. And silence for the narcissist is the deepest judgment. They'd rather be hated than irrelevant. So they make noise. They gossip. They drip-feed distortions into the ears of anyone who will listen. But you don't answer the call. You don't defend your name. You don't step back into their ring. You keep living. You keep breathing. You keep shining in a space where their words can't touch you anymore. And that's the final fracture. That's when they realize the mirror they once used to define themselves is gone. Because you didn't just survive. You reclaimed the reflection. You turned the mirror around. And now, when they look, they see nothing but the absence of your light. Stage 5 emptiness. Without a reflection, who even am I? Now we enter the quietest and most devastating part of the story. Emptiness. Not the kind that stings for a moment and fades with time. No, this is the deep, hollow echo of a soul that never grew roots. Because without someone to reflect them, the narcissist doesn't know where they begin or where they end. Without your reactions, your presence, your light, they lose the only compass they ever followed. They never built a self from within. They stitched together an identity made of borrowed moments. Your laughter, your pain, your validation. When you adored them, when you begged, they felt powerful. When you cried, they felt divine. But now, you're now gone. Not just physically, spiritually, energetically, eternally. And for the first time in their life, they are unseen. That's not just painful, it's annihilating, because the stage is empty, the lights are off, the crowd is gone, and in the stillness, they start to realize they were never the main act. They were just playing a part. They try to go back to the old tricks. The charm, the seduction, the performance. But there's no one left to applaud, no one left to mirror their illusions. And that is when the cold sets in. The cold that can't be dressed with designer clothes or masked with a new fling. A cold that creeps into their bones and whispers, "You were never whole." Because you were the one who saw them. You saw behind the mask. You reached into the H. You loved where it was hardest to love. And when you walked away, you didn't just exit their life. You took the only honest mirror they ever had. Now they stand alone, adrift in a world they can't bend, can't twist, can't mold. And what fills that space isn't regret, not repentance. It's vacancy, a bottomless well of identity crisis. But it doesn't awaken them. It panics them. Because healing would mean admitting the truth. And for the narcissist, truth isn't freedom. It's fire. And they'd rather burn than be reborn. Stage 6, the search for a replacement. I need someone, anyone, to make me feel real again. This is where desperation sets in like dusk. The glow's gone, the show's over. And the narcissist scrambles. Not out of love, not out of grief, but out of sheer panic. They're not chasing intimacy. They're hunting for a mirror. Someone, anyone, to gaze up at them with wide-eyed wonder. Someone who hasn't seen behind the curtain. Someone naive enough to believe the character without questioning the plot. So they dive into something new. Fast, flashy, and hollow. They post the photos. They frame the illusion. They slap a filter on the fracture and call it healing. But under every curated smile is the same plea. Tell me I still matter. What they won't say, what they can't admit, is that you were never just a face in the crowd. You saw the shadow behind the spotlight. You witnessed the tantrums behind the charm. And somehow you still tried. You stayed. You believed. And that made you dangerous. Because you carried the truth. You carried the power to see through the mask. And they can't have that. So now they sit across from someone new. Maybe younger, maybe easier, maybe unscared. And they pretend it's love. But inside, they're haunted. Because they're not falling in love. They're falling into comparison. Every laugh reminds them of yours. Every empty compliment echoes like a bad cover song of a symphony they already lost. And the most painful part, you're not watching. You're not clapping. You're not gasping. You're not looking back. You're living. And that, more than anything, terrifies them. Because they don't need a partner. They need a mirror. But the one who showed them their soul. The good, the ugly, the buried. You're gone. They and no reflection since has ever looked quite the same. Stage 7, ego collapse. I don't know who I am anymore. This is the unraveling behind closed doors, not a firestorm, no. This is ice. This is the silence that cracks a person open. After the spotlight fades and the applause stops echoing, the narcissist is left with something they can't manipulate it themselves. And it's terrifying. Because all their life, they've shape-shifted. They've danced for admiration. They've survived on performance. They built their identity from borrowed glances and stolen applause. But now there's no one left to clap. No one left to bend. No one left to mirror the illusion. And so the question they've run from for years finally chases them down. Who am I if no one is watching? The question isn't just heavy, it's fatal to their illusion. Because they never were, they just appeared. And now, in the stillness you left behind, they start to feel it. Not sadness. Not guilt. But a sinking, choking nothingness. They look good, polished, composed. They still wear the suit, still flash the smile. But if you saw behind their eyes, you'd see the chaos, the unraveling, the panic dressed as confidence. Because they've lost their source. Not just of attention, but of identity. You, the one who saw them. Who stayed when it hurt. Who loved even the pieces they hid. And now, they're performing for ghosts. And it's killing them. Not because they miss love, but because they miss being reflected. Stage 8, the quiet ending. You moved on. They stayed stuck. This is not a crash. This is a soft landing. A sacred silence. No final words. No curtain call. You just stopped. You found peace. And they stayed on the carousel, spinning the same tired cycle: seduce, control, discard, repeat. They kept rehearsing lines for a story you no longer read, posting pictures, planting rumors, parading masks. But you were already gone. Not in anger. Not in pride. Just gone. Free. And that broke them more than any fight ever could. Because you didn't need closure. You didn't need apologies. You didn't need to be proven right. You simply chose yourself. You didn't win by breaking them. You won by rebuilding you. And now, While they orbit illusions and chase echoes, you walk forward, quietly, boldly, beautifully. No longer bound by moods that weren't yours. No longer dimming your light to soothe someone else's shadows. You're not theirs. You never were. You are your own. And if doubt ever whispers in your ear, if the silence ever feels too still, remember this. They didn't lose you because you weren't enough. They lost you the moment they tried to own you. And you? You gained everything the day you let go. That is the mirror noise, not vengeance, not spectacle. Freedom.